This video will show you how to conduct the zonation mapping survey. The idea of this survey is to record and to photograph the transitions between different habitat types. Now these transitions might be quite abrupt, or they might be quite gradual changes from one habitat type to another. So for example, you might be moving from a mobile dune area to a semi-fixed dune area. If we think about why we would do this, it can be useful to show changes over time in a sand dune system so that we can understand better what processes are occurring there and what impacts those processes are having on the vegetation. So for example, if an area of scrub is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it might be useful for the land manager to know that, so that that manager can then make informed decisions on whether some of that needs cutting back or not. The zonation mapping survey should be carried out at least once a year, and it should be carried out in April or May. You should be given some instructions or some guidance on how to find the start point of the survey, and that might involve using a GPS unit or a map, or you might have some written instructions. So you would need to ask whoever is the manager at your site, or whoever you're having some communication with, as to where is this location, how do I get there. So you're going to need some equipment for doing your survey, and I've got the list here of equipment, things we recommend you have with you. First of all is a GPS unit. So I haven't got one here today, but if you've got a handheld GPS unit, that's really useful because they give you very accurate locations. You can get your grid references in there to allow you to find the start point and to find the end point, and you can also use them to record locations as you go. Mobile phone app, so if you're happy using the phone app, that can be a really useful tool to get through the survey. It's quite intuitive and everything goes in once, you don't have to worry about losing information along the way. Compass, so if you have a compass like this, and if you're happy using something like that, then that can be really useful because you should have some sort of bearing for your transect. So for example, it might be 300 degrees, so you can set your compass to 300 degrees, find out which direction that is, and that gives you a good idea where you're going. A long tape measure, so we should have something like a 50-meter tape measure, and that's going to be used for measuring the distance between your transitions. And then at the same time, when you're doing that, you're probably going to need something like marker canes to mark the different points, mark the different transition zones. And if you can put something highly visible on the top, like some red tape or something like that, that'd be really useful, I think, because it's quite hard to see them otherwise. We've also got our recording form, so if you're using the phone app, that's fine, but if you've got a paper recording form, obviously you'll need that with you. And then also the same for the different sand dune zonation, the guide that shows you the different zones. So there's a copy in the app, or there's a physical copy you can have with you as well. And also you'll need a camera. So every time you stop at your transition point, you're taking photos left and right. So you can do that via the app, or you can do it with a separate camera. Just make sure that you write down the time you took those photos, and you know which photos are which when you come to look at them again later on. Each site is different, and you might find that there might be some sort of marker post at your site, or there might not be. So you would need to ask your site manager or volunteer coordinator, whoever you're communicating with, to make sure you've got these kinds of instructions, because if there's a marker post there, you want to know that, because that could be a really useful feature. The sand dunes can be a bit tricky to navigate in at times because they're a bit short on landmarks, so if there are posts there, they're a really useful thing to aim for, and it gives you a bit of guidance to make sure that you know you're in the right place. Once you've found your start point for your transect, you then need to figure out which direction you're going, so you can use your compass bearing, and if you get one of your canes, you can mark your start point. You can then unreel a tape measure and mark another point, either 50 meters further along, or if you can't see that far, then just pop the cane in as far as you can. This is a much easier process if there's two people, because what you can do is you can have one person at the start, the second person can go and put another cane in and unroll the tape measure, and then if you have 3 or more canes and you can still see, you can perhaps send that second person walking further, and you can check to see that they're still in line, and you can put another cane in, and then you can mark something like 100 meters at a time. You can then come back to the start and you can use that tape measure to record any of your transition points. As you're walking along your transect, use the guide to the different zones, which you can find in paper form in the manual or in the app. And as you walk along the transect, use the guide and assess when you're at a point where you think you've transitioned from one zone to another. When you get to that point, there are a few things to do, and I'm going to read this just to make sure I tell you all the right things. So you'll see the manual tells you to record the grid reference. So you should be able to get that from a GPS unit or from your phone. You might find the GPS units can be a bit more accurate than mobile phones, so if you do have one of them, that's a good thing to use. And then we want the names of the zones you're moving between. So you might be moving, for example, from mobile dunes to semi-fixed dunes. So you record the zone you're moving from, and you record the zone type that you're moving to. You also need to record the distance from the last transition point in meters to where you are now. And we want that to the nearest 10 centimeters, ideally. So record where was the last transition point, how far is it from there to here. Also, at each transition point, there are some photographs to take. So if you're walking on your transect line, what we want are 2 photographs at the transition point looking right and left, so at right angles to your transect line. So you're off, you're doing your survey, you've got all your equipment, you know where you're going, but there are a few little hints and tips hopefully that I can give you which might make that process a little bit easier. So first of all, the change between different zones, that transition point between the zones, can be a bit difficult to decide, okay, where is that point? If it's quite a gradual change, if there's not one obvious place where it switches from one zone to another, you're just going to have to use your best judgment really, and have a look one way, have a look the other way, try and think about what are the defining characteristics, look at your guide, and try and pick a point where you think in one direction there are certain features that help you to put it in a particular zone category. Look the other way and think, yeah, I think those features are different over there. Might be a different type of vegetation that's dominating, for example. And just, yeah, give it your best shot. Also, we've got safety to consider. So if you are, say you get to a point where the dune's very steep, or it's quite unstable underfoot, or you get to a dune slack or a thorny bit of scrub, then just obviously consider safety first. Find a way of navigating around the bit that's difficult, and then get back onto that survey line as soon as you can. So don't move away from the survey line, go in a different direction, just go around the obstacle or around the dangerous bit, and then get back on the original line and then carry on. When you get to the end of your transect, then that could be at an area where there's lots of scrub, lots of woodland. So when you get there, what you're looking for really is a sort of reasonably defined boundary or border. So it's not when you get to the first plant, the first tree, or the first shrub. It's when you've sort of got like a line of trees or a line of shrubs. So something where there's again it's this kind of call between the two different areas. If you're going the other way and you end up at the beach at the end of your transect, then what we would like you to do is to figure out, okay, where's the last bit of vegetation? You're walking towards the sea at this point, where's the last bit of vegetation? And then go roughly 5 meters past that. So you're just going along 5 meters of sand, and then call that the end point for your transect. Okay, that's great. Well, good luck with everything. I hope it goes well, and we'll look forward to getting some results.